Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a familiar street, but something feels disturbingly off. The sky is a color you've never seen before, an impossible hue that shimmers between violet and silver, as if the world itself is holding its breath. You look down and realize your feet are bare, though you remember putting on shoes. A child stands at the corner, looking at you with ancient eyes, and just as you try to speak, your voice dissolves in your throat like mist. You wake up with a jolt, heart racing, palms damp. The image clings to you like smoke. It wasn't just a dream, it was something else. Something ... trying to speak, but what was it saying? You move on with your day, brushing your teeth under fluorescent lights, checking notifications that scream for your attention, sipping burnt coffee, yet somewhere beneath the ordinary rhythm of waking life, a question stalks you in silence. Asterisk. What if that dream meant something? What if it meant everything? We treat dreams as oddities, absurd little tales conjured by a sleeping mind, a talking animal, a crumbling stairwell, a loved one, long gone, appearing in your living room with a warning. We laughed them off. We'd say, that was a weird dream, and carry on. But have you ever asked, asterisk, what if dreams are not the byproduct of sleep, but the language of your soul? Carl Jung once wrote, dreams are the guiding words of the soul, not metaphors, not symbols for therapists to interpret with cold detachment. Asterisk guiding words, as if the deepest, most hidden part of you is trying to speak in its own dialect you've never been taught, but instinctively understand. So why do we ignore them? Why do we trust numbers, deadlines, and curated social personas, but not the wild, cryptic voice that rises from our unconscious in the dark? Maybe it's because dreams don't flatter us. They don't conform to polite norms. They show us who we are behind the costume of daily life, without filters, without pretense. They expose the fractures, the desires we deny, the wounds we pretend have healed. They might whisper truths we're not ready to hear. And truth, especially the truth that sleeps deep within you, can be terrifying. There's a paradox we all carry. We claim to want to know ourselves. We read self-help books, take personality tests, repeat mantras in the mirror. Yet when the self speaks through dreams, symbolic, raw, untamed, we recoil. We call it nonsense. We forget. We suppress. Why? Because dreams don't offer control. They don't unfold on our terms. In dreams, we drown without reason. We fall forever. We make love to enemies and kill those we love. These aren't aberrations, they're encrypted messages, scripts from a deeper theater of meaning. But what if every image, every absurdity, is a signpost from within? You wake up from a dream where you're running through a maze that keeps resetting. You chalk it up to stress. But what if it's more? What if your soul is screaming that you're stuck in loops of your own making? That your waking life has become a repetition compulsion? You dismiss it. Go to work, answer emails, repeat the maze. Think about it. You spend nearly a third of your life asleep. That's over 20 years. If you live long enough, 20 years immersed in a world we pretend doesn't matter, a realm we deny even as we live in it every night. Why would nature, evolution, biology, whatever frame you choose, design such a vast, vivid realm with no function, no purpose? Is it truly random, or are we just illiterate to a deeper language? Imagine your soul is a vast cathedral sealed in silence. Dreams are the echoes that escape from under the locked door. We hear them in sleep, muffled and strange. But instead of kneeling to listen, we plug our ears with disbelief. We're taught to worship logic, to obey reason. Yet the most pivotal moments in your life, the ones that shaped you, were born not from logic, but from instinct, emotion, visions, fears, hopes. In other words, from the same place dreams are born. What if we've been listening to the wrong signals? You walk through your days obeying external voices, bosses, systems, advertisements, expectations. But at night, when the world goes quiet, another voice speaks. One untouched by social contracts or currency. One that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. And here's the paradox that shatters complacency. The more we ignore our dreams, the more hollow our waking lives become. The less we speak the language of the soul, the more we feel lost, aimless, numb. We chase goals without knowing why, smile without feeling joy, succeed without meaning. And all the while, the soul whispers in dreams, begging us to pay attention. But how do you decode a message in a language you've never been taught? How do you distinguish a dream's warning from its metaphor? And what happens when we lose the ability to dream at all? That is the question that should haunt you not as fear, but as urgency. Because if Jung was right, and dreams are truly the guiding words of the soul, then to ignore them is not just to miss a message, it is to go through life, deaf to your deepest truth. So now, the real question emerges, not a quiet, intellectual musing, but a scream beneath your skin. Asterisk, what have your dreams been trying to tell you all this time? And what part of you has been trying not to listen? What happens when the soul tires of whispering? What happens when it begins to scream? Let's go deeper. We live in a world that exalts clarity, precision, and control, yet the soul thrives in mystery, ambiguity, and surrender. And so the language of dreams, ancient and symbolic, becomes increasingly foreign in an age obsessed with optimization. How can something so essential be so disregarded? The answer lies in the quiet war between the unconscious and the conscious mind, a war that began long before you were born. At some point in childhood, you stopped believing that your inner world was a reliable place. Maybe you were told your imagination was just fantasy. Maybe you were scolded for daydreaming or told to grow up when your inner experiences didn't match what the world demanded. And slowly, bit by bit, a partition was built, a psychological border wall between your waking self and your dreaming self. The wild, instinctual landscapes of the soul were paved over with polite logic, standardized thinking, and external validation. Carl Jung understood this with frightening clarity. He wrote of the shadow, the rejected self that we exile into the unconscious, the parts we disown: rage, vulnerability, desire, intuition. Dreams are the theater where these exiled actors return to the stage. But instead of applauding their courage, we close the curtain before they can speak. Nietzsche warned us that he who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. But what happens when the monster is within? When we battle the contents of our own mind, labeling some parts as acceptable and others as shameful, the rejected fragments fester, and they don't die quietly. They return in dreams, sometimes as snakes, sometimes as floods, sometimes as silent cries from familiar faces warped into masks of grief or terror. In dismissing dreams, we are not just ignoring stories. We are turning our backs on our own fragmented selves. And then comes the most dangerous illusion of all, the illusion of a unified, consistent self. Modern society has perfected this lie. You are told to be yourself, as if you are a single, knowable thing, as if the chaos within you is a glitch, not a clue. But the self is not a statue. It is a constellation of shifting parts, some luminous, others shrouded in shadow. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer believed that what we call our will is largely unconscious, a storm beneath the surface. In that sense, you do not own your desires, you are their vessel. And how do these unseen forces speak? They dream. Aldous Huxley once remarked that the deepest sin against the human mind is to believe things without evidence. But what if we've been conditioned to ignore the only evidence that truly matters, our own inner experience? What if dreams are evidence of a truth deeper than facts, evidence of meaning, hunger, and the primal longing for integration? Here rests the hidden problem. We live in a culture that has amputated the soul from psychology. In place of wholeness, it offers productivity. In place of meaning, entertainment. In place of dreams, distractions. You are encouraged to analyze your thoughts, not listen to your depths. You are taught to decode data, not symbols. The result, a society full of individuals who are technically functional but spiritually starved. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that we are condemned to be free, thrust into a universe without inherent meaning, forced to invent purpose as we go. But what if dreams are the soul's attempt to restore meaning, to remind us of forgotten archetypes, to reconnect us with a story older than language? The dream is not just your mind at play, it is the soul at work, sewing torn symbols back into coherence, offering you riddles that lead to your own buried truths. Yet in this modern world, dreams are filtered through algorithms, reduced to meaning, or dissected into trivial lists. 10 common dreams and what they mean, as if your soul could be mapped with bullet points. No wonder we feel fragmented. Every major philosophical tradition has warned of this split, the division between the outer and inner worlds. The Tao speaks of harmony lost when we forsake our nature. The Gnostics believed we are divine sparks trapped in a world of illusion. Jung viewed the modern person as spiritually homeless, a wanderer in a civilization that no longer believes in symbols. And what is a dream but the symbol in its purest form? Let's take a deeper look. Why do we fear the unconscious? Because it does not obey. It doesn't care about your career goals, your curated identity, your careful image. The unconscious is not interested in comfort. It is interested in wholeness. It is the part of you that still remembers the cost of everything you've ever suppressed to survive. And it dares to show you every night what you've tried to forget. It shows you your grief in the face of a stranger who weeps without reason. It shows you your longing in a kiss that never ends. It shows you your rage in a burning building. And still we wake up and say, what a strange dream. But the dream wasn't strange. You are strange to yourself. The dream is merely honest. And so the real danger is not in the dream, it's in your refusal to listen. The hidden problem is not that dreams are cryptic. The problem is that we've lost the capacity to hear what they're saying. We treat them like noise when they are, in truth, the music of the soul. You were born with a language already inside you. Not English or Spanish or any spoken tongue, but a symbolic language carved into your bones. Dreams speak it fluently. But if you'd never learn to listen, you will live a life narrated only by your conscious mind, a voice that tells you what to do, but never why. This is the fracture at the heart of modern life. We know how to measure everything, but understand nothing. And until we reconcile with our dreams, we will remain strangers to our own souls. But what are the consequences of this split? Let's look at the cost of ignoring what dreams are trying to say. Let us look at what happens to a culture and a person who goes deaf to the soul's deepest voice. Let's go even deeper. You might think you're awake now. You're scrolling, reading, breathing, eyes open, heart beating, coffee cooling on the table beside you. But deep beneath this layer of wakefulness is another you, a forgotten you. And that part of you is still asleep, not resting, not dreaming, asleep in the most dangerous way, cut off, silent, fading. This is the unseen consequence. Because when you stop listening to dreams, you don't just silence a part of your mind, you exile an entire ecosystem of your inner world. You disown instincts, memories, archetypes, and desires that don't fit your waking narrative. But they don't vanish. They go underground. And from below, they begin to shape your waking life in ways you never suspect. You develop compulsions you can't explain. You sabotage relationships without understanding why. You chase goals that don't satisfy you. You wake up in a life you built degree by degree, paycheck by paycheck, and wonder why it feels like a stranger's skin. And all the while, the soul waits for the 1 hour you lower your guard. When you sleep, when the ego loosens its grip, when the masks fall, and then it speaks not with words, but with symbols, scenes, myths. It floods your consciousness with signs. But if those signs are met with indifference, confusion, or fear, they retreat. And something else steps in. Numbness. We don't notice it at first. The loss is subtle. You begin to feel vaguely disconnected from your choices. You go through the motions. You feel a dull ache that no amount of therapy, vacation, or success can soothe. That's the soul knocking and receiving no answer. And so it adapts. Instead of whispering through dreams, it screams through symptoms. Insomnia, anxiety, sudden tears, panic in the supermarket, an unexpected breakdown in a moment that should have been joyful. The medical world will offer labels: generalized anxiety disorder, depression, adjustment disorder. And sometimes these labels help. They create maps. But what if the root of this disquiet isn't illness? What if it's silence? Silence from the very part of you that holds your essence. Neuroscience tells us that dreams consolidate memory, process emotion, and help with creative. But this is still just the surface. What neuroscience can't explain is why a mother keeps dreaming of a daughter she never had, or why a man, after 20 years of marriage, begins to dream of drowning in still water night after night, till he leaves his job, and the dreams stop. There's a reason for this. The soul doesn't speak in data, it speaks in drama. Cognitive psychology reveals how the brain is hardwired for narrative. Your mind doesn't store life as spreadsheets, it weaves it into stories. And dreams are the raw, unfiltered theater where these stories rehearse. But unlike daytime thoughts, dreams bypass censorship. They show you truths you won't admit, fears you won't voice, needs you won't name. And the more you ignore this language, the more fragmented your psyche becomes. Modern life encourages this fragmentation. You're encouraged to segment yourself. Be professional here, relaxed there, romantic over there, productive always, but no one ever teaches you how to be whole. Dreams do. A dream might show you a forest you've never walked through. You wake up, disoriented, shaken, but that forest might represent your own internal wilderness, the parts of you that have gone untouched, unexplored, unloved. And if you ignore it, that part of you remains abandoned. And what is the cost of internal abandonment? You begin to feel foreign in your own life. This is not poetic exaggeration. It is a psychological epidemic, a kind of spiritual Alzheimer's, a forgetting of the self so profound that one day you stand in front of a mirror and you recognize the face but not the story behind the eyes. And still, dreams come. Because even in exile, the soul doesn't give up. It tries other doors, symbolic illnesses, strange cravings, sudden obsessions with obscure music, ancient ruins, forgotten languages. You think these are whims. They are not. They are messages, flares sent up by the psyche, hoping you'll look up. Culture doesn't help. You live in a society that monetizes distraction. It sells you dopamine. It teaches you to swipe away discomfort and scroll past anything that asks too much of your attention. But dreams can't be scrolled. They force you to pause, to feel, to reflect. And for many, that is unbearable. So we medicate the symptoms. We chase peak productivity, optimize routines, infinite stimulation. And the more we do, the further we drift from the unnameable truth that dreams try to bring us back to. What is that truth? That you are more than your thoughts. That you are more than your name. That beneath every rational decision you've ever made lies a non-verbal story alive and vast, written in fire and fog. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, wrote that the deepest human drive is not pleasure, but meaning. But meaning is not found through logic alone. Meaning arises from depth, from encounter, from the moments that shake you out of routine and into rawness. Dreams are those moments, but only if you listen. The true danger of ignoring dreams is not missing a message at S, losing your capacity to feel meaning at all, to look at your life and feel nothing, to love without passion, to succeed without fulfillment, to exist without ever touching the deeper thread of why you're here. And that is no small loss, because once the soul grows silent long enough, something else takes its place. The false self, the version of you crafted entirely by external expectations, the you who smiles when dying inside, who climbs ladders you don't believe in, who says yes when every cell screams no, and at night the dream still comes. But now it is darker, more cryptic, less a message and more a warning. This is what happens when the inner world is denied for too long. It doesn't disappear, it distorts, and then it leaks into your decisions, your relationships, your health, until one day you find yourself asking the question you never wanted to face. Asterisk, how did I become someone I don't recognize? But the dream knows. It has always known. And it's still waiting to be heard. Still waiting for you to remember. Let's find out what it takes to reclaim that voice. What it takes to rebel. What does it mean to rebel? Not against a government or an institution, but against the quiet tyranny inside your own mind. The kind that tells you every day to ignore what you feel, to dismiss what you dream, to become smaller than you are. What does it mean to rise not in protest of the world, but in defense of the soul? To rebel is to turn toward the darkness instead of away, to light a candle and descend into the cave of your own unconscious, not with fear but with fierce curiosity. The rebellion begins the moment you stop calling your dreams nonsense and start asking, asterisk, why this? Why now? What truth is clawing its way up from the deep? Because rebellion, in this context, is not chaos, it is reclamation, a return to wholeness. Carl Jung said, asterisk one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That's the heart of this revolt, not denial, not escape, but confrontation, making the unseen seen, no matter how painful, how strange, how raw. And here's the paradox. The rebellion begins in silence, not in shouting, not in declarations, but in sitting still, with eyes closed, and listening to what emerges when the ego stops interrupting. It starts with giving weight to the symbolic, treating the image of a dying tree in your dream not as a random firing of neurons but as a message, perhaps a message about a part of you withering from neglect, a part you buried long ago. This rebellion is internal, but it changes everything external. Once you begin to live in dialogue with your dreams, you change the structure of your reality. You stop moving automatically through your days. You begin to question the roles you've been playing. Why do I work here? Why do I love this way? Why do I fear silence? Why do I crave approval? And the answers that come aren't always gentle. They may arrive as grief. You may realize you've spent a decade living a life that was never truly yours. You may mourn all the dreams you didn't chase because someone else told you they were impractical. You may feel rage for the years of self-betrayal, the buried talents, the strangled voice. But that pain, that's the sound of the chains breaking. You're waking up. And when you do, the world doesn't always reward you. People around you might say, "You've changed," and they'll mean it like a curse. You'll hear it in the tremble of lovers who can no longer predict your needs, in the confusion of coworkers who no longer recognize the agreeable version of you, in the silence of friends who preferred your mask to your truth. Because rebellion always costs something, but it gives something back, to something priceless. You, the real you, the one beneath the performance, the trauma, the people-pleasing, the you that remembers, the you that never stopped dreaming. Even when your waking life was a desert of routine, you start to trust your intuition again. You begin to make choices that don't make sense to others but feel undeniably right in your body. You walk away from perfectly good situations because your dreams told you the cost of staying. You begin to follow signs not out of superstition, but because you've learned to hear your own language. And that's the heart of this revolt, reclaiming your symbolic literacy. We live in a world obsessed with literalism. Everything must be concrete, proven, explained, but the soul doesn't care for spreadsheets. It speaks through poetry, myth, and metaphor. It doesn't shout, it whispers, and dreams are its breath. To rebel is to become fluent in this forgotten tongue. You learn that a dream of falling might mean the collapse of an old identity. That water, rising, might mean the emotions you've damned for years are finally breaking through. That a stranger's face, recurring again and again, might be a part of yourself you need to meet. And as this symbolic language becomes familiar, your waking life transforms. You no longer dismiss the oddities of your Dada-mist train, the sudden rainstorm, the song that plays 3 times in 1 week as meaningless. You begin to sense patterns, synchronicities, invisible threads pulling you towards something. And you follow, not because you know where it leads, but because you feel it is right. This is the new compass, not logic, not external validation but resonance. He becomes someone who lives from within. And yes, this makes you strange to some. In a world that values speed, you start moving slowly, feeling each choice in your bones. In a culture that worships certainty, you begin to honor mystery. In a society that fears death, you start to see endings as sacred. Because dreams teach you that nothing truly dies, only transforms. And so do you. You'd begin to see your wounds, not as flaws, but as portals. You understand that the nightmare you kept running from was actually the beginning of your liberation. That the monster chasing you down the hallway was trying to deliver a message. That the child crying in the corner of your dream wasn't weak, she was waiting to be held. This is what Jung meant when he called dreams the guiding words of the soul. They don't just warn, they don't just reveal, they guide. And that's the most radical shift of all. You stop looking to the outside world for direction. You turn inward. You begin to orient your life around inner symbols rather than outer rewards. Your career becomes an expression, not a prison. Your relationships become reflections, not projections. Your purpose isn't found, it's remembered. This is not easy, but it is necessary, because the cost of living a life unaligned with your inner truth is not just discomfort, it is despair. And no amount of success, pleasure, or distraction can fill the void left by a silenced soul. So if you're ready to rebel, don't raise your fist, your awareness. Don't fight the world, listen to your own. Close your eyes. Let the dream speak. Let it lead you into the forest of forgotten symbols, into the ocean of the unseen, into the furnace of transformation. Let it burn everything that is false, so that what remains is not just awake but alive. Now, let's walk to the edge. The final revelation is waiting. Imagine waking up tomorrow and remembering everything. Not just what you did yesterday, not just where your keys are or what time your meeting starts, but something deeper, so much deeper. It shakes the scaffolding of your identity. Imagine you open your eyes and suddenly recall the life you were meant to live, the promises you made to yourself before the world told you who to be, the song you were supposed to sing before someone told you to be quiet, the path you felt beneath your feet long ago, before the map was burned and the noise began. Imagine that truth, returning not gently, but like a flood breaking through a dam you didn't even know was there. That is what it feels like to truly awaken to the guiding voice of your soul. And here is the ultimate truth. The dream was never just a symbol. It was a seed. Every dream you've ever had, no matter how fragmented, how surreal, how terrifying, was a whisper from the deep core of who you are. Not some mystical puzzle to be solved, not a prophetic warning to be decoded, but a call, a seed of becoming, a sliver of your authentic self breaking through the concrete of conditioned life. And if you ignored it, it didn't die. It just waited, because the soul is patient. But make no mistake, it is not passive. What you felt as emptiness was never emptiness. It was the pressure of an unlived life pressing against the walls of your carefully curated existence. It was your own potential, coiled like a spring behind your back. And dreams were the mirror. It used to show you the shape of your cage. You may have thought they were random. They weren't. That recurring dream of running but never arriving, that was your soul warning you. You're moving, but not toward anything that matters. That one where you kept screaming but no sound came out, that was your soul saying, you've silenced yourself so completely, even your inner world can't hear you anymore. And that dream where you did dance somehow, woke up still alive, that was a prophecy, a symbolic death. Because to be reborn, something has to die. The final realization isn't found in some ultimate dream. It's not a single image or symbol or message. It's the understanding that every dream is a lifeline, a thread pulling you back into alignment with the center you forgot you had. And once you see that, there is no going back. You can't unknow the truth that your soul has always been speaking, that it's been holding out a compass made of metaphors, archetypes, and half-forgotten childhood memories, that it's been placing breadcrumbs through your life, hoping you'd turn your gaze inward. And when you do, everything changes. The dreams stop being cryptic, not because they become simple, but because you become fluent. You start to see that the wolf in your nightmare wasn't a threat but a protector, that the burning house wasn't destruction, it was transformation, that the door you were afraid to open in your dream was the same one you refused to open in your waking life. You begin to live symbolically, not superstitiously but soulfully. You make decisions not by logic alone, but by resonance. You learn to feel your way forward, because now you trust the part of you that dreams, that ancient, intuitive core that knows what your conscious mind has forgotten. And you start to listen not just when you sleep, but when you're awake, to the body, to silence, to sudden tears and quiet longings. You treat them not as glitches, but as guidance. This is not fantasy. It is a paradigm shift. You stop living life like a problem to be solved and start living it like a story to be remembered. And it's here, right here, that the veil lifts. The final, most powerful realization is this: your life is the dream. Everything you see, feel, suffer, and hope, for it's all a projection of the deeper story unfolding inside you. You are not just a dreamer. You are the dream, and the dreaming, and the dreamed. You are the story being told, and the storyteller whispering it into being. And when you begin to live with that awareness, something sacred happens. You stop sleepwalking through your days. You begin to honor moments like myth. A walk becomes a pilgrimage. A heartbreak becomes a rite of passage. A coincidence becomes a message. A conversation becomes a turning point. You stop asking what you should do and start asking what the story wants now. Not as fate, but as creative participation, as dialogue with the soul, as the co-creation of a life not ruled by fear or programming, but by presence. And that's the miracle. You become fully present, not just in body, but in being. You would become the flame that remembers the fire, the echo that finds its origin, the dream that wakes itself. So the next time you close your eyes, don't beg for rest. Ask for revelation. Ask your soul to speak. Then, when the images come wild, strange, luminous, don't rush to interpret them. Don't silence them with logic or analysis. Just listen. Just feel. Just remember, because dreams are not detours. They are the path. They are not escape. They are return. They are not madness. They are meaning. And in the end, you will see what Jung meant all along. The dreams are the guiding words of the soul. Not metaphors, not myths, not mysteries, but messages meant for you, spoken in the only language that could reach you when all others failed. The language of symbols, the language of truth. the language of the soul that has been dreaming you into wakefulness one night, one image, one moment at a time. So wake up, dreamer, your real life is finally beginning.